All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown. All three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing Polar Star by Martin Cruz Smith. This is book number 2 in his Arkady Ranko mystery series set in Russia, about Russian themes and Russian stuff. I'll edit that out. Anyway, it was written in 1989. It's the sequel to Gorky Park, which was written in 1980. So book 2, it took him all like 9 years to come up with book number 2. But since then, he's got like all these books in the series. I've got them right here. Got my entire Arkady Ranko Moscow, Russia murder mystery series right there. One of my favorite mystery series of all time. And Gorky Park, I read and reviewed book number 1 here earlier this year. And if you'd rather watch this book review first before you watch the review for book 2, that's cool. All you need to do is type in my last name, Durfee, into your YouTube search bar, and then Gorky Park. Also type that into your YouTube search bar, and that, through some sort of pagan sorcery, that book review will magically appear upon your television screen. I don't know how it happens, but anyway, Gorky Park was fantastic. Now, forever and ever, you know, I've been reading these books for the last 25 years. I've been following this series for a long time. Polar Star was I always considered it my favorite book in the series. But I will have to say, after rereading Gorky Park just 6 months ago and then reading this one just now, I have to think both books are fantastic novels. I will put Gorky Park slightly ahead at this point in my life. So this one kind of slipped to number 2, and Gorky Park is kind of in the number 1's position now. But anyway, let's talk about the cover first, because you know I love graphic design and cover illustration. This got a great cover illustration. This is a first edition hardcover. It's got a great cover illustration by the classic and illustrator Wendell Miner, who did a lot of great illustrations back in the day. There's also some maps in here of not maps but diagrams of the ships, like the Polar Star ship and the Eagle, which are 2 of the ships that are integral to this story. Okay, so what is the story about? The story is about the big ship Polar Star, which is a big fishing vessel. It's the big one. It's the big one here on the front. It looks like a big oil tanker. Now the Eagle is another ship that's part of this fishing fleet, and it's represented back there. But now the Polar Star is a Russian fishing ship, and it is surrounded by a fleet of, and it's a big ship. This is where they store the fish. The fish are caught by other ships, smaller ships, and brought to the Polar Star, and they're dumped in the Polar Star because the Polar Star is the big carrying vessel. But the Polar Star is surrounded by this fleet of American ships run by Americans, and they're the ones that actually go fish, bring the fish to the Russian ship. The Russian ship carries it. So it's kind of like this joint venture between the Russians and the Americans in the Bering Sea off the coasts of Alaska for fish. And this is the way it happened. I mean, the Russians, and even during the height of the Cold War, with the Russian and the Americans hating each other, they kind of came together to fish. But anyways, the Polar Star is the big Russian ship. All these American ships are the little ships that go fish and bring the fish back. Well, Arkady Ranko, our main character, is stowing away. He's kind of hiding from the KGB on this big ship, the Polar Star, because in Gorky Park he kind of got himself in a little trouble with the KGB. So now he's kind of on the lam, and he's taken a job as something called the slime line worker on the Polar Star ship, working with the fish. Well, turns out that off the coast of Alaska that's why I'm wearing my Alaska shirt. Part of this book takes place in a town called Dutch Harbor, Alaska. The only time the ships ever go to shore, They go to Dutch Harbor, Alaska, and they spend some time there. But anyway, it's part of the plot. I won't get into it. Well, I won't. It's part of the spoilery part of the plot that I won't get into. But anyway, on so basically, this is what happens. I will just, because I'm fumbling around here. So and I'm only going to read the first paragraph of this copy. A Soviet factory ship makes its way through the fog of the Bering Sea off the coast of Alaska. Battered, streaked with rust, carrying a crew of 300 people, 50 of them women, the Polar Star is virtually a Soviet village in American waters. Its satellite ships are American trawlers that catch the fish. The Soviets clean the fish, freeze the fish, and carry the harvest home. The last net of the night bears pollock fish, codfish, crabs, and more. But up from the depths of the sea, the body of a woman missing from the Polar Star is also in the nets. So that's what happens. That's the main murder in this murder mystery series, is a girl of all these ships, of the Polar Star and the satellite ships, a girl has fallen overboard or been kicked overboard or murdered or something and dumped into the sea and to be forgotten, but somehow one of the little satellite American ships got her in the crab trap. Just like a 1 in a million shot. Oh, we picked up the dead. You thought you got rid of the body. You thought you got rid of the body murderer by pitching her over the seaboard. But, we pulled her in one of our crab traps. 1 in a billion. But it happens. But now Arkady Renko, some of the crew of the Polar Star know who Arkady Renko is, that he used to be a police investigator. And they're like, you must investigate this. We have to get our paperwork in order, or otherwise we could all be in trouble. So you need to investigate this. You need to prove that it's an accident or a suicide or something, just so we are all not in trouble for some sort of weird murder. And so he doesn't really want to do it. But through some manipulations and things, he's kind of forced into doing this investigation, which is cool because, when I reviewed Gorky Park, I talked about the suffocating way that, the people just lived in Moscow in the 80s, just suffocating with communism. They were so paranoid, they couldn't move, they couldn't breathe. In the city, they couldn't escape. Well, now it's even more claustrophobic because now we're on a ship. And the communism is just even more suffocating on this ship. And it's almost as if then they've got these Americans that they're working with who seem to be free and they don't give a fuck about anything. And they can do whatever they want and say whatever and nobody cares. But the Russians are kind of like, man, we gotta kind of watch our step. We don't know who on this ship is going to turn us in when we get to port. We got to be kind of like mind our P's and Q's. Meanwhile, the Americans are just kind of frolicking around like, we don't give a fuck, And then, so it's like this dichotomy, it's like this weird like kind of juxtaposition of world values and how different people on the Polar Star, the Russian vessel of 300 people, 50 of them women, which is causing a lot of problems here. The dead body is a woman, American woman. And this is one of the reasons why they want to dot their I's and cross their T's with this investigation, because they don't want an international incident on their hands where an American woman is murdered by, like, God forbid, a Russian or whatever. And so all of these themes play in where it's just like some of the Russians that are on the ship, they don't want to be Russians. But a lot of them are very Russian. They're like, we are communists. We will turn you into the KGB. We do not care. We are for the motherland, And then some of them, like Arkady, are like, wow, this is worse than living in Moscow. This ship, But anyway, so he's working. He does the investigation. There's some other characters that help him. He's assisted by Natasha, who is the Russian. She's Russian to the core. She's one of the ones that he's fighting against. But then this other girl, Susan, helps him. She's the American girl that's kind of helping him with this investigation. Exact opposite of Natasha, of course. And then there's Karp, who is probably my favorite character in any Arkady Renko novel. Karp is this big, muscle-bound, brutish, crude Russian guy who just happens to be a criminal that Arkady Renko investigated in Moscow years and years ago and sent to the prisons in Siberia. So now Arcadia is on this ship with this dude that he himself sent to prison, and it does not go well for either of those characters through most of the book. It is like, when those two guys get into scenes together, it gets pretty intense. And it's just a great book. It's so wildly and vastly different from Gorky Park, but yet so similar in a lot of ways, with the theme of communism just being a shit show from start to finish, and how it just blocks everything good and gracious in the world. And it's just such a great book. And then each one of these mysteries afterwards is about a different topic, but with the same kind of themes. Anyway, I love this book, 10 out of 10. Just like I gave Gorky Park 10 out of 10, this one gets a 10 out of 10. Although I will say, for my money, Gorky Park is just a slightly better book. Whereas, for most of my life, I've kind of considered this my favorite book in the series. Anyway, that's my review of Polar Star.